Today I'm going to show you how to build an HDR image for use in Blender to create both a background and also for lighting. And there's lots of videos about this, so why should I need to create another one? Well, if you're doing a space project, the problems are a bit different. You can't exactly go out into the middle of space with a camera and a tripod and take 360-degree images. And if you go and use even the highest resolution images from Hubble, well, it's not very convincing, and I'll show you what I mean. Here we've got a high resolution Hubble image with the camera whizzing around, and you can see the stars are way too big, they're way too bright, and it just doesn't look very convincing as a space image. And the reason for this is that all the Hubble pictures are a tiny section of the sky, so everything, if you try to use it as a background, is all wrong. So the only thing you can do is to actually create your own image. So let's go and do exactly that. I'm not going to throw these Hubble images away because I'm going to use some of them, and I'll show you how in a minute. And here we are in Gimp, which is a free image editor. I'm not going to use Photoshop. I don't really like using paid for applications because not everyone can actually use them. I do own a copy of Photoshop on my other PC, which is a Windows PC, but I don't use it very much, to be honest. I keep it because people send me odd file formats, and it's very good at file conversion. So, to start with, we'll create a new file. Now, image size for an HDR file, you're going to need at least 4,000 pixels wide. 5 or 6 is even better. So I'm going to make it 5,000 pixels, and it doesn't truly matter whether the height is exactly the same or not. In this case I'm going to make it the same. You don't have to make it the same. So this is the sort of size image that you're going to need, and it's going to warn me it's massive, and yes, I know. So there we go. Now the first thing I'm going to do is fill it with a background. Now the thing is that backgrounds for space, people invariably use black, and if you look at any good colour images of space, you will see it's actually not black at all. It is actually a blue. It's a very, very dark blue. In fact, you might be able to just about see that difference there. In fact, I'm going to make that less of a difference. It's very nearly black, but it's not. It's blue. And that's worth remembering because it will create a much better sense of realism in your picture if you've got this slight blue tinge to your background. So let's select the fill tool, and we just fill the whole canvas, and it's going to take a while because this is a big canvas, with our blue. And when it's as big as that, you can actually see that it is in fact blue. In fact, it's not quite dark enough, so let's do that again. Now I'm going to turn down the saturation even further, and we'll do that again. That's better. That is a kind of bluey black, which is what you want. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to create a stamp to make some stars, and the easiest way of doing that is by opening another new image. This time we're going to make it a lot smaller. We're going to make it just 200 pixels square, and then we come on to star colours. I'm going to fill it with the same colour fill as our main image. Now we're going to use this image, or I'm going to use this image for lighting, and that means I've got to turn the emission values in Blender right the way up, which really means the only thing I want to be white is the sun. Everything else, the stars, need to be grey or toned down colours. So that sounds a bit weird, but when you turn the emission value up on Blender textures, what happens is that things have a tendency to go white. So our grey stars that we're going to paint on here will end up white or whitish in Blender, and they won't produce so much light that they swamp the whole screen out, which is what was happening with that spinning ball image earlier. So I'm going to create a grey. It's not going to be very grey. It's going to be grey enough that it won't emit as much light as the sun, however. So there we go. And I'm going to scatter a few stars around here, and as well as the grey stars we're going to have a few blue and a few red, because that's what space is like. So we'll go to our paintbrush tool, and here we've got our brush options, and we want these to be hard, so I'm going to select a hard edge brush. We don't want them to be big. The first ones we put in are going to be tiny, so I'm going to have a 2 pixel star. Okay, so, and you can see that. And a fairly randomish pattern there. So that's the first set of stars. Now these stars are going to be, if you like, the background stars. These are the far away stars, so they're all going to be small. So I'm going to come up here, and now I want some red stars, but once again we don't want them bright red. We want them, well, we want them saturated but dark, I guess, so we want something like this, somewhere around about here. Otherwise, again, they're going to outshine everything else. So I'm going to put in some of these red stars, and you probably won't even really see these on your screen. I can see them as tiny little dots, but once Blender's gone and boosted their emission values, you'll be able to see them quite well. Now we want some blue stars. Again, fairly dark blue. Something like that. And this is now going to be used as a brush to paint that pattern over here, but by using the brush in different ways the pattern itself can be varied. So let's go and do that. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hit select all, edit, copy, and that's for this little section here, because when you go now to our brush tool, you will see you've got that selected there, which is a copy of this. So you're going to be using this as a brush, and we know it's 200 pixels, so I'm going to turn this up to something like 200 pixels. That'll do, that's close enough, and you can see how small this is in our big image, but it's necessary. And I'm just going to belt this around the place, and you're not even going to be able to see it. And these are the stars that are right in the background. You will actually be able to see these stars when it's actually in Blender. You're not even going to see it now. And now I'm going to change the angle so that our brush is now being painted at an angle. There's a reason for this, because we don't want this pattern to be so obvious. We don't want people to say, oh look, he's used a brush and he's repeated it all over the place. No, we don't want that at all. And then I'm going to change the size, and I'm going to change the angle again. Oh, 45 degrees or something, maybe like that. And I'm starting to see tiny little stars around here. So there we go, and I'm going to change the angle again. Let's go the other way, up to nearly 90 degrees, something like that. And I'm not so worried about the edges being overlapped perfectly here, because most of what we've got is blank space. So that's all our little stars in the background taken care of, and now we want some much bigger stars, and the way we're going to do that is we're going to go back to our little window and go back to that one. Oops. Here's me selecting menus on the wrong window. Lost in Windows. There, that's the one. Right, I'm going to go back to this one. And this time I'm going to go into the image menu. I'm going to scale it. Scale image, and I'm going to make this now 1000. You'll see Blender automatically fills in the bottom one there. And now look what we got. You can see what we had, and you can see that this actually isn't all that good at 1000 resolution, because things are too big. So I'm going to have to play around with this. Something like that. And I'm still using that brush that I had. Put a few more stars up there, put a few more down here, and that will do. Oh, it might not do actually, because I'm not looking at the whole thing. Fit image in window. Need some down here. I'm looking for kind of an even coverage, but that's good. Right, now what I want to do, I don't want to overwrite those earlier stars. So what I want to do is I want to get rid of the background, and I can do that by selecting the background using this tool, the colour select, hitting delete. First of all, of course, I need to go to the layer menu, and I need to make sure there's a transparency layer. Add alpha channel, hit delete again, that's better. Edit. I'm going to select all, edit, copy. And we want to go back to our original drawing. And now when we go into paintbrush, we can see we've got this thing which is a transparent image with all those other stars on, the larger stars on, and I'm going to make that up to our 1000 size. I'm near enough to it. You can see, there we go. And do the same thing again with angles. And we're just building up layers here of different sized stars, but they're less bright stars than were on the Hubble image, although there's probably just as many of them. Now if I go into view 100%, you can start to see these individual stars. If I select a different tool, you can start to see these individual stars and where they are, and you can see that they're in clusters just like on a normal sort of star map, and you can see that they're bigger and smaller ones, and there's areas with no stars in, and that's quite important because when you look at the night sky there are areas with no stars in. However, maybe there's a few too many in here, so there we go. There's a few too many areas without any stars in. I prefer to have a few more stars than that. But we do want some areas that don't have stars in. And that will probably do. And now what I want to do is I want to create a sun, and I want to add some other stellar objects. So how are we going to do that? Well, let's start by going to fitting the image in the window. That's important. I want a large sun, and the sun is going to be bright. It's going to be absolute white, and I don't want that brush anymore. I want a fuzzy edge around my sun. Now we can actually control the hardness of the edge, but I don't want it that big. How big's the sun normally in the sky? It doesn't take up much more than about a 20th of the width, does it? Yeah, this is going to be the brightest object in our sky. I'm going to stick it somewhere about there. And there it is. And that's all we need to do, because Blender's going to make that shine so brightly you won't believe it. And now what I want for variation, I want to put a few more stellar objects other than stars and one sun into this image. And to do that I'm going to use some of the Hubble pictures. So if I go back here, and I'm going to pick some objects I like the look of, and we want objects which have black all around them to make them fit in. So I'm going to pick, for example, this one. I quite like the look of that. So view image. It's small. Hang on a minute. Let's do it properly. View image. Copy image. Go to Gimp. And edit, paste as new image, and that'll open a totally different file with this in. And now what I want to do is I want to get rid of some of the junk. What do I mean by the junk? Well, all these stars that we said we didn't like, that are too bright, we want to get rid of. And the way I'm going to do that is by using the eraser tool. Although I could, no, I'll cut it and select it. What the hell, it's going to be easier. So I'm just going to roughly cut around this, because in actual fact this is actually going to be quite small. Hey, I know it's a whole galaxy, but because we don't want it overpowering our image, so I'm going to roughly cut around it like that. And I'm going to cut that, go back to our original image, edit, paste as new layer. You can see it comes up. I want it smaller than that, but before I do anything with that, I want to adjust the colours of it, because it's too bright. There's some white bits in it. So we go to colours, brightness and contrast, and we'll start turning the brightness down so that it's not going to outshine our sun too much. And then I'm going to scale it, scale our layer with 450 or something like that, a bit under half the size it is at the moment. There it is. Is that still too big? It is, really. Right. Scale it again. Maybe 300. And I'm going to put that somewhere else. I'm going to put it down here, so it's on the opposite side of the sky to the sun, and I'm going to rotate it somewhat. Where are we? Where are we? Rotate, 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 rotate. There. About like that will do. Something like that. And we'll just check that. I'm going 1 to 1 and then finding it. It's here somewhere, folks. There it is. We can see it's there, and what we want to do is we want to kind of smudge it out. So the first thing I'm going to do is use our eraser tool, and you can set the opacity of the eraser tool and set it right the way down. Don't want such a big brush size, nowhere near. Still too big. Something like that. And now we can just get rid of this obvious line around the edge here. Opacity down even further. You can see what we're doing is we're blending this image in so it looks like a natural part of the picture. And that's how you add a space type feature from Hubble. And you can add as many of these as you like, but it's important once you've done with it, you select image and flatten image. And then it takes it from being a regular layer into being a complete picture. Right, shall I do that again? Why not? I'm going to do that once again. So we can throw that one away, because we've used it, and we'll go back to Firefox, And let's pick something else. Let's pick something else dramatic. What else is dramatic? That eye is, but it looks a bit artificial. This is, but it doesn't seem to go to the edge. Oops, my alarm's gone off. Excuse me. It's bedtime. I'm going to stay up beyond my bedtime. Well, there was a really... here we go. Something like this. This is pretty cool. So I'm going to use this. So I'm going to go to View Image, Copy Image. It's exactly the same as before. Up to Edit, Paste as, New Image. To bring it in as a completely new image. Then I'm going to cut around it. Now I can be a bit more clever here now, because I can cut around it and there's not so much junk here. I can just cut around it. Edit. Copy. Go back to our other image. We want to reset it so we can see all of it. So we want View, Fit Image in Window. And where am I going to put my new item? I'm going to put it up here because there's not a lot up there. So, Edit, Paste as, New Layer, and you can see it's quite huge actually, and it's the wrong colour, black background, and you can see what I mean. This is blue, although it looks black. That is actually black. Okay, so we want to get rid of all the black in this, so we can do that using our colour selector. There we go, hitting delete, and now we've got rid of all the black in that image. We should be able to use it. So to be able to see that, we're going to select None. And there should be no black around it now, and if we put it halfway over the sun, there you go, you can see there's no black in it. But we don't want it anywhere near this size. Well, it's probably still good to have it big, but not that big, eh? So we'll go up to Layer, and scale the layer, and see what it looks like at 500. Something like that would be cool. And I'm going to rotate it again. It's always a good idea to rotate these things because then it doesn't look really silly. Sometimes otherwise it looks like you've taken some pictures out of a chocolate box and cut them up and stuck them on. So let's see, something like that. That will do fine, I think. And we'll do our usual thing of looking to see what it looks like. Alt 1, and it's over in the top right hand corner somewhere, so we'll just whiz along to there, and there it is. Now we've got to alter the colours, and you have to do this before you flatten the image obviously, otherwise you'll alter the colours in the whole of the image. At the moment we're just altering the colours in this layer. So we're on to brightness and contrast. Take the brightness right the way down. Like so. And then it's not going to outshine our sun. Right, So we're image, flatten image. Now I'm going to save this on file, on export as, and I'm going to put it desktop and in my project folder. There we go. And let's get rid of Gimp now because we don't want him anymore. Well, not for the moment. Not unless we want to make any changes to it, which once we've seen it in Blender we might want to. And we might want to alter the colours, we might want to alter the level of the white. So let's go into Blender. I'm going to open up the blend file that I did with the ball, and that's all it is. It's the ball, and the camera is animated. Can't even say animated now. Animated around like that, which is how I did the animation. And the key thing is, if we go to compositing view, you can see here in the world settings, and make sure you've got this globe selected here, I've added in a background texture, environment texture as a background, feeding into the background colour. It's a single image, it's colour, it's linear, it's equirectangular, and that's something you need to make sure that it is. And now I want to load in our new image, which is what we just created, space 1, and I can go back to the default view and I can try rendering an image. As you see, I've actually got the emission turned up too high on Blender, so I want to set the emission differently. Do that by going into the world. I only want maybe an emission of 1. You can see now you've got a more space-like background. That sun in this image won't look bright enough yet, and there is a very good reason for that. And it's also a weird shape actually. Okay, I'm going to have to do the sun the traditional way by putting a disc in there and forgetting about the rest of it. But I'm going to run this animation now, and you can see how different it is from the previous animation, and I'll be back in just a second. So here we go, and this is the new animation with our picture. Ignore the weird shaped sun. I will in fact delete that and use a simple lighting disc, since obviously Blender doesn't want to display this file the way I'd like it to. But yeah, as you can see, the stars look very different today, and just so you can remember what the original Hubble Space Telescope file animation looked like, I'll show you that again now as well.
Harmonic, ionic, bionic, atomic. It will astonish you. It's magical and casual, actual but classical, practical. unusual but